one of the things I just looked up, just I think is interesting, is that while 67% of our 340 million population, or I guess I should say adult population, owns stocks in some form, right? Mostly through people's 401k or but 60% of our country does own them, either through mutual funds or whatever. That's the number of people that own any part of the market. The other side of that coin is 87% of the total value of the market is owned by the top 10% of wealth. Mm-hmm. And 50% of the total value is owned by the top 1% of wealth. So while moving production overseas and getting things cheaper and bringing it back, raises corporate profits, well, who owns the corporation? Well, the people who can own the shares, right? And the people that own the shares are people that own stock. And so it's a very interesting thing. And if you've ever seen the chart, excuse me, if you've ever seen a chart on, consumer price index, which is, everybody knows, has moved up, gas is more expensive, eggs is more expensive over, the last 50 years. Real wages have been pretty stagnant. And so you have this widening gap between what people make in wages and what things cost. Obviously not things like technology, but just your basic commodities, goods, and services.
Well, and the way you can move those around is artificially, right? You can put in a giant, minimum wage, but all that really does is crush the bottom end also, because prices move up just as fast, maybe even faster than wages do. So if we're talking about, entry level positions, sort of the, jobs you had in high school or right out of school, that are not meant to be career jobs. They're really not. And so the interesting thing right now, I think you're going to talk about a little more, is the middle class squeeze is when you have somebody who is managing people and they're making, I'm just picking some numbers here, $24 an hour. And then all of a sudden the brand new person that hires in, the 17-year-old that's still in high school, has to come in at $20 an hour. There's not that much of a margin, right? And so the years of experience and everything sort of can and for some people's eyes can be meaningless if the next person in here that doesn't even know where the coffee machine is making $20 an hour. It doesn't really help that person, the $24 an hour person. And so as a business owner, do they just turn around and say, oh, well, we'll just pay you $30 an hour, and then have to turn around and talk to the customer and say, hey, by the way, that burger that was $4 is now $7, but hey, I got to pay my people.
Yeah. Well, if you've been to McDonald's,
they just go somewhere else.
You can see that.
No, they just add the gratuity percentage higher on the kiosk.
That can be done too. Yeah.
So yeah, fast food is not exactly a fast food anymore. Just and it's all part of that.
Well, it's not cheap.
It's not cheap. Yeah. Minimum wage, and so now it costs you a lot more. But yeah, no, the middle class thing, I pulled up some things I thought were interesting, just because I don't know if people realize that. And this is more by generation. But you go back to, greatest generation, silent generation, baby boomers. So, that's, 1901 through 1964. And it generally costs you about 3 times your income, 3.5, 4 times by baby boomers, your income to buy a home. Mm-hmm. That was you could basically have a single income family, and you could afford to purchase a home. Back then, a lot of women stayed in the home and were homemakers. Fast forward to today, and again, these things just continue to move up. I said stagnant wage growth, but increasing prices. For our generation, I know we're all Generation X here. We were up to 5 times income by the time that we were in our peak earning years and being able to buy a house. So millennials, 6 times income. So now you're talking Generation Z, 1997, 2012, we're up to, 80% of income. So it's massive numbers. And so when people start talking about, hey, we can't afford to buy a house, and again, there's other factors, and I'm not saying that everybody's working as hard as they could. It's, again, we're purely zeroing in on numbers here. It's not the same as when baby boomers were trying to buy a house. 3 times income, 80% of income is quite a different, and it's something that I think we squeezed a lot of wealth, as we just pointed out, up into the, to the upper class, because of this outsourcing of jobs and, corporate profits, and, we own those, and that's been great. That part's been great, but a lot of wealth has been shifted up. And then you have a lot more social assistance. You have more social assistance programs. And so, I mean, I argue if if you're on social assistance, you really can't be middle class, right? Because middle would be you take care of yourself. Again, it's not a value judgment.
Sure.
It's an economic thing. If you can't take care of yourself, you need social assistance, you need government assistance. Well, then you're actually taking from somebody else. So you're not really middle class at that point. So we shrunk the middle class. We have more lower class. I guess lower class is not a great word, but people that need assistance, and then a small, same size, wealthy class, but way more wealth.
And it's easier now to move. The world's smaller.
Yes.
Like you can move around really easily. And if you're wealthy and you live in Saudi Arabia, you can also live in Redondo Beach. Mm-hmm. And you're going to be competing with everybody else who wants to buy that beach house or wants to buy the house a block from the beach. And so I think I don't even know if anybody's even done any numbers on this, but ownership by non-U.S. citizens has to be off the charts relative to what it was in 1965. I mean, I don't think you had a lot of people that were here and had a second home or a third home or a fifth home in the United States, and now it's really easy. I was just in South Florida with my daughter 2 weeks ago, and you go down there in certain parts of the state, you speak Spanish. I mean, there's just massive influence from Venezuela, commonly Cubans in Miami. It's a great experience, but it's definitely a different place than when you just go to the west coast of Florida. And there's massive wealth that's pushed in there from Latin America, and the condominiums. That's who you're competing with. You want to live in Miami? You're competing with all of Latin America, probably much of Europe, to buy that same condo. And it's not, you're not just competing with the kids that you went to high school with to buy a house anymore.
Right.
And so, and again, I think there was a time where you had to bring a bag of money, and now you just wire money in.
Yeah.
It's very simple to do. And so, yeah, I don't know if all of this is the same in Des Moines or in Champaign, Illinois, or other places that are not coastal U.S. I don't think there's a big demand to get into the Tulsa housing market as there is to get into L.A.,
Sure.
Miami, New York City, and so, yeah, I mean, we're all raising kids right now and all staring down the barrel of where are our kids going to live? What are we going to do? I mean,
Tulsa.
if we just had a flight to Tulsa, it's a good place to start, right? Yeah. But yeah, there's going to be. I mean, most kids coming up now, if you want to just get in and buy a house, you're going to have some help from somebody else. There's just not a lot of.
Well, I mean, typically where we're
easy
seeing
upward
it
mobility
is, as you were going through these numbers, the baby boomers, the baby boomers and Gen X have benefited from the other side of this, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so what we're seeing is just those folks now, there's more of the parents are helping the kids from the equity in the home. It's just kind of passing the rock down the hill. Whereas a lot of the baby boomers and the silent generation, they did this on their own, but the houses were cheaper. So now that the houses are more expensive, they benefited. The equity in their home is tripled, quadrupled, quintupled, et cetera.
Right.
So that's what we're
as long as you have ownership, and that's really what some of what Adam's talking about too.
Which was a lot more common back then versus today.
It's not just stock assets. It's also real estate assets that are owned by a smaller group of people. And as we have plenty of land in the United States, like we have tons and tons of space relative to like Europe, let's say. But it's not uncommon for Europeans to never own anything as far as real estate goes. They're lifetime renters. Mm-hmm. For generations, it's been that way.
Yeah.
So I mean, as people become more city based, you're just going to have more of that.
I just think it's important to point out again, things change. Look in all things. I'm a big sports person. Things change. So when people who are baby boomers are saying, well, we did it, you should be able to do it. Well, it's different now. And it doesn't mean that you shouldn't work toward it. And but 3 times income and 8 times income are completely different numbers. It's just like, comparing sports accomplishments across, decades. I mean, comparing people in the 40s or 50s in baseball to today, it's a completely different game. I don't know how you compare it. Have you ever watched a 1970s NFL game? and then say, oh yeah, that's the same game I see on Sunday. It's not. It's everything changes. So the tariff thing, again, this all goes back to tariffs, and we think what they're trying to get to. I don't know if it'll work. I don't know if it's the right answer. But we do have an issue with our middle class, and we have to have jobs for people to be able to sustain themselves without assistance, and not just push all the wealth up to the top.